Greetings to all my tech heads out there in the KevTechify Nation, and if you're new here, welcome. In this episode, we're going to look at configuring server-based authentication. We'll be discussing the steps to configure server-based AAA authentication, how to configure a TACACS Plus server, how to configure a Radius server, and then how to authenticate to that AAA server using the different commands. This episode is part of my series on network security. I'm Kevin here at KevTechify. Let's get this adventure started. Now, there are 4 basic steps to configure server-based authentication. The first one here is to globally enable AAA to allow the use of all AAA elements. Now, this step is a prerequisite for all other AAA commands. The second step here is to specify the server that will provide the AAA services for the router. Now, this can be a TACACS or a Radius server. Step 3 here is to configure the encryption key needed to encrypt the data between the network device and that AAA server. So we have to configure that key. And finally, the 4th step here is to configure the AAA authentication method list. And what we're going to do is we're going to refer to either the TACACS or the Radius server. For redundancy, it's possible to configure more than one server. To configure the TACACS Plus server, first thing we're going to do is enter in the AAA new model command here, and that's going to globally enable AAA. The next thing we're going to do is use the TACACS server command and specify the name of our TACACS server. Here we're using server T for TACACS server. After we do that, in the TACACS server configuration, once again, notice we are in TACACS server configuration. We can tell that by our prompt right here. Configure the IP address here of the TACACS server using this address IP version 4 command, and you specify the IP version of our TACACS server. Down here in our little diagram, we have our TACACS server at 192.168.1.100. Now, the address IP version 4 command allows the option to also modify the authentication port and the accounting port. So if you want to modify those ports, you can do that here with the address IPv4 command. Now, what we want to do here is you use the single connection command here to enhance TCP performance. If required, multiple TACACS servers can be identified by entering their respective IP version 4 addresses in the TACACS server name command. And finally, the key command right here. And so the key command is used to configure the shared secret to encrypt the data transfer between the TACACS server and the AAA enabled router. So this right here is that secret key, or shared secret key, TACACS-password. To configure a Radius server, first thing we need to do is enable AAA globally on our device. So AAA new model that enables it globally. Then you use the Radius server name command. And right here, the name we're giving it is server-r for Radius server. If required, multiple Radius servers can be identified by entering in a Radius server name command for each server. So you can have multiple servers. You just change the name here. So server-r1, server-r2, create different names for that. In the Radius server configuration mode, once again, we can tell we're in the Radius server configuration mode by our prompt here. You can configure the IPv4 address of our server. That's right here, 192.168.1.100. And we can also configure our authorization port and our accounting port on our devices. Then we can configure that shared secret key here. So shared secret key, our secret key is basically our password, radius-password. When the AAA servers have been identified, the servers must be included in the method list of, right here, our AAA authentication login command. Now, the AAA servers here are identified using the group command. Most of the time, what you're going to use here is basically our group, unless you're doing something a little bit different. And then once you're with our group here, these are all the different groups, and this is where we can specify typically radius or TACACS, TACACS plus. Here, in this command screenshot, what we have here is we've enabled AAA globally, we've set up our TACACS server, we've set up our radius server. Now, to configure the method list here for the default login to authenticate, first using TACACS plus server, and then second with radius server, and then finally with a local username database, you specify that order within the AAA authentication login default. And then you specify the method. And so the first one here is the group TACACS plus. That's what we have up here specified by these commands. Next we have the group radius, that's specified by these commands. And then we have local case. Local case right here is what we have defined locally on your device. So you went in there and you created a user with a username and password. That's what we're using. It was my pleasure to provide you with this wonderful episode on configuring server-based authentication. If you like this episode and you got value out of it, and of course, depending upon what platform you're using, please click that like button, give a 5-star rating, leave a comment. This all helps me bring you more great content. Please take a minute to subscribe to my channel and click that notification bell. All my socials and contact information are on my website, KevTechify.com, and you can get all these episodes in video and podcast form. In the upper right is my playlist for my series on network security. In the bottom right is one of my favorite videos that I linked just for you. Thank you so much for watching this episode of my series on network security. Once again, I'm Kevin. This is KevTechify. I'll see you next time for another great adventure.